Hello, dear viewers. We're in our fourth show of the series, The Solution. We've taken quotes from Baal HaSulam, where he talks about the economic systems of Baal HaSulam. And here in the studio, we want to learn them together. Hello, Rav Laitman. I wanted to ask you, we spoke in the previous shows. Baal HaSulam said that the socialist system looks like the correct system. Socialism, the way he interprets it. That's what I wanted to ask. He says that the socialist system, and we really spoke and saw that what's happening in the world, what they call socialism, is not what he intended. So was he short of terms? Why did he stick to this system, socialist system, if it's not what really exists? First of all, he wrote it 100 years ago almost. So we have to understand that the word socialism was still in its diapers. This term was, if we look after the socio things in society and the nation, the people, that's called the socialist attitude. But since concern for the people, for socio, for security, distributing things, there weren't systems like that. There wasn't a unified health system, pensions, social security, single parents, disabled people. What we have today in developed countries, which is standard, and it's not called socialism, but it's just protection from the ways to protect people. For people who belong to society, who are part of society, in a developed society. So we don't call it socialism anymore, but concern for people in all kinds of situations, also weak situations. That's what they called it, socialism. Because we need to understand that until 100 years ago, or even less, 70, 60 years, the nation was not protected like it is today by all kinds of systems. And therefore, that attitude was called socialist. If we take Scandinavia, for example, there's really the implementation of that ideology, concern for the people, for each individual. It's truly at a very high level. But we cannot call it socialism according to what Baal HaSulam says, because for him, socialism is reaching an equal standard of living. And these regimes remained capitalist. He says that there doesn't need to be competition, but competition needs to be at the human level, cultural, educational, and wisdom, that a person raises himself for the society, not to ruin yourself, to take advantage of others, to raise yourself. Not competition in money, not competition in profit, corporal profit, but rather competition in a person's internal development. There's pride, jealousy, honor, all kinds of signs and medals that a person receives from society. We're interested in distributing to all the excellent people, because at the end of the day, they raise themselves and increase the spiritual wealth of the society, the connection between people, the extent of education, science, culture. That was his intention. And that's why you need to remain in competition with others, because it's for everyone's good. But where it comes to collective destruction, why should we allow this competition and make it some excellent thing? Through this competition, economic competition, we've reached a state where these huge societies have become global, and they are managing the whole world. And without asking, everything is in their hands. Their goal is only to maximize profit, no matter at whose expense. So they operate wherever it's comfortable for them, without asking countries, nations, governments. That's what's actually happening. Therefore, it's not socialism. In the developed countries, the people get some service, social service, but it's not a socialist regime. Maybe you can think of another title because it's confusing. What title would you give for this type of system that he's suggesting, Bala Sulam? I think the integral society. Integral, you know. Economic people, experts like yourselves know what that means. That the society is connected in all its parts, in all its arms, to one system, to give everyone security in their standard of living, a single standard of living. Rational, and apart from that, to give everyone development, spiritual, cultural development, educational, to provide people with all the rest of their internal needs, spiritual needs, that in materialist things, he'll be satisfied with what the body needs in a healthy and correct manner. And apart from that, with no limits to develop as a person. You talked about the destructive development. Up until a few years ago, the competition itself, it was a way to distribute things in an equal manner. Everyone naturally got according to their abilities, strong or weaker. But I'm asking, as long as the society wasn't integral, everyone was individual, was capitalism more suitable to maintain the situation rather than socialism that he termed it? He saw in the developed countries at the previous beginning of the previous century, he already saw they're going in the wrong direction. He saw it. You see, a smart person sees what's coming. Others didn't see it. Others didn't see where it was taking us. But even back then, if we look at industry, we see that industry then began to take into account not the good of the people or the world, but only itself. For example, light bulbs. They used to last for a long time, but even in the last century, at the end of the last century, they started making them in a way that they won't last for a long time. The goal was truly to maximize my personal profit without thinking about any repercussions. We're ruining our ecology. We're getting money out of people that we allow them to profit. The main thing is the personal profit. In the first few years, you're right, it was good capitalism. We can also say the same thing about slavery, that people didn't used to be in slavery, and then they saw that it was advanced, and then they got into that system. How can it be that it was worth it? But it was worth it. It was worth it for the masters, and it was worth it for the slaves. They understood that for them to get bread and be under the landlord, not to think about anything, It's not as far from Charlie Chaplin, the way Charlie Chaplin explained things, but it was an advanced system for that time, especially since we used to get people we used to bring people from the village into the city to work. So, of course, it was very effective, but only for a short period until those landlords understood that they need to think. They never thought about it until it got like a mutation, the whole capitalistic. It started eating itself. If I'm thinking about capitalism, we're the owners, we create more jobs, and it affects the whole society and country. It's not even a good assumption, because the moment that capitalism grew out of that industrial revolution, it continued in the industrial revolution, and the goal was to replace people with machines so there won't be problems, and people can starve to death. Who cares? That was the goal from the beginning. You don't need to bring some pretty words. Each and every one of us can describe himself instead of the landlord. Today, we also see in every factory what is actually the main expenses. It's paying people, right? Salaries. It depends where, but if I'm capable of bringing a machine instead of that, so that's great. Am I thinking about the workers? Of course not. That's the capitalist attitude from day one. Until they didn't invent enough machines, they saw it as a very advanced system, but it was just a slavery system. Not that I'm against it or for it. Of course, we're here to trying to understand the trends of each and every approach. If I look at this method, I can see it as it maintained the fruit before it was ripe. Because if they went to socialism, like we saw that it happened, it was even worse. Yes, and that's what happened in Russia. They were in a very advanced, developing well in capitalism around the World War I. Before the 1900s and 1910, if they had developed it would have been fine. They were educating the nation. If they were educating the nation, then they could have brought them to a pro-socialist regime like Scandinavia or Europe. But because they broke the proper capitalist development, they didn't allow growth. They didn't allow the people to thrive, to become ripe. They bought socialism before its time and destroyed themselves. You have to give everything its place. But Baal HaSulam is saying something else here. He's saying it's worth it for us. What did he say in the 20s, in the 1920s? He said we already see, if we don't all see, we already see that we are going into a closed system where the whole world is one family. He saw it, and of course his feeling isn't our feeling. He's much more advanced than us. Therefore, the capitalist system is surely limping and will bring us to destruction. And it's 100 years later now. Maybe in this connection we'll read the first quote. He says, we spoke about the socialist system being the system, and then he explains that the public has to be at a certain moral level to receive the system. And now I want to read the first quote. Because humans do not understand to be careful and look at each thing as if it suits him. And if the thing is effective and true according to its content, you have to go into it deeply to see if it really suits their needs. If they've overcome things to an extent so they can digest them, And since there is a lack of development, the truth flips over and becomes destructive. We have to be patient. We have to allow everything to develop, and that depends on the people, the environment, and the general atmosphere. Do you think people are ready to accept the Baal HaSulam system? Today, we really have a lack of time. We're out of time. Because on the one hand, of course, the world is not ready. If you talk with people in the street, they don't know what to do. They don't accept the method of connection, that we're all interconnected. They barely understand. They heard about it, that the world is connected, that if something happens at one end, of course, it affects other areas, but they don't really feel it in their bones. They don't feel it on their skin. So you can't do a lot with those people, even though we see that industry, commerce, culture, education, and the destiny, our collective destiny, is becoming one. We see that the nations themselves, the people aren't ready to accept it. So the question is, will we ever be ready for it? According to my understanding, it won't ever be ready. But rather the regular people, like say 90% of the people, they suffer, but they're not capable of understanding the reason for their suffering. They scream at their government, or they can scream at some country that's doing something bad, the way they're turned around. But to truly understand the reason, I don't see a lot of financial experts, social experts. The only people in the world, if I surf around the internet and try to find people who really look at the world in a healthy way, with a single view, overbird view, there's just a handful of people, a few dozen people. We see that governments are weak. They're managed by economic systems that are international, and then the government, their hands are tied. They can't do anything. I'm not saying that it's good or bad, it's just a fact. If there are bodies that are defining things with their lobbies and getting into all kinds of systems, and governments, they're defining what's good for them, what does the government do? It just looks after security a bit, and it's just maintaining things for its country, because the general economic state and the atmosphere is managed by capitalists. You're making a differentiation between nations and Israel. Is Israel ready? No, not ready. If we talk to people in the street, they don't get it. And also the crisis that they're seeing it as mistakes of the government, it doesn't bring about anything. It's a problem. And then the wisdom of Kabbalah comes and says, first of all, we have to educate the people. That's what Baal HaSulam is talking about also, that we have to sit down on benches and truly educate people to the extent that a person is capable of digesting. That we're today in the world is one family. He's not saying like in a nation or in a village, but he's saying like one family, the whole world. It's a connection that's so strong. It's not a connection in our pockets, profit. It's an emotional connection, much deeper. I have to really feel it in my heart. I have to feel it as someone in Thailand or China. To even that extent, we're connected. It's a demand. I can't bring a demand like that to the people. And I don't know if through education we'll be able to raise the nation to that level. The education, integral education says, yes, we have to strive toward that. You mentioned the subject about the education of the nation. And it's managed by capitalists. The capitalists are very scared that the system isn't working. They understand it. One of the Nobel Prize winners wrote, they have golden eggs. They've produced golden eggs, and they want to maintain it. So why didn't Bala Sulam talk about taking those people that manage everything anyhow, and just to put them on the bench for them to lead the rest of society? Why do we have to take the whole society and sit them down? Because first of all, the next regime will not be managed by those capitalists that their desire is only to get rich. There's like a trend, a bad trend. They're very clever, very capable. You can only be jealous of. They have very powerful forces, and they're excellent in everything. They are just not capable of acting except for their personal individual profit. Their calculation is very clear. I am destroying everything just to profit for myself. And in that manner, they cannot manage the global world, and they cannot get out of the previous situation. And if they do, only if they see to what extent the world is becoming destroyed and not leaving them any option to advance. So education won't help here before the destruction. I don't think they are capable. Only if they have a slight sensitivity to the advanced system. I don't know. I think it's a problem because it's people they've been educated that way. That's how they understand the situation. They still have the option to exist to a certain extent. They have ways to fill their egos still, their huge desires. How can they get rid of it? If I was in their shoes, what do I have left? If we possibly, through our integral education, through workshops, if we show them to what extent they can be fully satisfied from being managers of the future society, the wonderful society, balanced society that brings humanity to development, that brings us to correction, to cleansing. It's worth trying, of course, but it's a very severe internal revolution they'll have to go through. You said that those millionaires will remain the managers, and now you're saying something completely opposite. I'm not saying the opposite. I'm saying whatever is good in them, it's good except the attitude, or will we be able to explain to them that that attitude is crumbling, falling apart? And like he said, Guy, they won't have an option, but can we bring them a new method that they will feel that they also have satisfaction, development, competition, but just not on the account of others? That I don't know yet if it's possible. But of course, if we could, those people are incredible managers. We just have to change their goals slightly to raise it to a higher level. This is what our evolution is demanding from us right now. Human society must make itself rounder, just like any integral society analog. And the development has to be upward. So it's really a question, because we're learning that they come with a very, very high desire. Bala Sulam also called them the like the whales. So the question is, how long does it take them to correct? It depends on their how much they can absorb they can absorb things very well. They're very clever. I would invest everything in it if I had access to them, to all those tycoons. I would be happy to try to do it to the extent that I have contact with them here and there. I see it's very difficult, and I understand them as well. When I'm in touch with those people, not really when I'm trying to educate them. I feel how we also have to build an environment that will encourage them and help them. Let's do it. Connect a group together. I'm ready. If they begin with them like as a game, I'm fantasizing. After a brief explanation about the ego, its development, the integral world, and all that stuff, just to bring everything to an equal level of understanding. After that, I would say to them, let's play a game. We'll make a legend. A future country where everyone is fully satisfied in an equal manner in this world, plus or less, a little bit more or less, but in their spiritual satisfaction. There we're not dependent on resources, pollution, or anything. Relatively, it's all internal and spiritual. I would attract them to this challenge. Let's build the future. How can we do it? Not to actually do it, but to get suggestions from them. What can they suggest? How do you build economic systems, industrial systems, marketing, commerce? It all stays. Just these acts are directed toward to an equal standard of living, to creating basic necessities for life and nothing more. For that, we have to explain to them, like Bala Sulam says, that the economic security for them and the others will be bigger in equal distribution than it is now. How can we explain that to them? A person is fed from society. We've seen recently how all these regimes that are falling, especially our neighbors here, what's happening with all these billions of Gaddafi, and soon the same thing's going to happen with Assad, and what happened with Hussein, Saddam, and more and more. So I don't think that the problem is that a person lives off internal satisfaction. Money isn't money. When I get some piece of paper from the bank where I have millions, it fills me. Some kind of value, spiritual value, not corporal. I don't feel it in my hand. I don't sit on the gold. And what do I do with it? There's satisfaction here of the security, calm, of fear, of doubts, the feeling of power, the feeling of abilities. Can we give him those feelings from him receiving from the environment truly value, like that they appreciate him, that they respect him? A feeling of support, love, a warm feeling toward them that fills him to such an extent that no calculation in any bank will not fill him. At the end of the day, a person is filled from the difference between different values. If he receives satisfaction like that from the environment, because we live in a global world and every one of us is a small part of the general system, if we relate to like that to the richest person in the world, in our relation to him, we can cancel his need to provide to himself, or even much less, with control by force and money. It's psychology. It's simple psychology. Based on the assumption that they don't listen to us, so who will take their place in the integral society? Really, their place? It's not that they won't listen. The issue is, are they capable of changing their attitude, their inner attitude, where they see the world in a selective manner, here to build, to destroy there? If they don't see the world as an integral world where you have to do things for the good of everyone, how I operate for the good of everyone from where I am. Say I'm in my society, how do I, as a part inside a body, relate to the whole body for its own good? How do I provide the whole body with my services loyally and really in 100% supply of what the body needs from me? In that case, we won't change their attitude. If we don't change their attitude to the world, they won't be able to stay in charge. So we'll need other people that will have the integral attitude. Who are those other people? Whoever studies and whoever takes over this integral management. It can be someone who was never a manager or rich or leader or anything, but he has the right attitude toward the world. If those people with the integral education got together instead of the G20 people, then they would sit around a round table and would reach something else. They would reach a conclusion, a common decision. They would open new processes. They would come with a desire to do something, but their approach is completely different. Those other the rich people today are not capable of accepting the global world. And you see those committees, they come and go, and that's it. So you're saying the part that's Galgalta Ve'enaim, I don't know. Those people will come, you'll see. The main thing is to advance everyone with the new education. If we look at the economy, we get to the classic economy with the invisible hand, where everything organizes itself in a natural way. The salary is influenced, that people are receive salaries according to their capabilities. Those who are excellent get a good salary. Those with less get less. And then there's like a natural system. And then there's balance. And there's no unemployment. And there's no overconsumption with the whole system that we created after the crisis of 29, where they just wanted to blow things up. And that's why we're seeing this mutation today, where there's all kinds of products that we don't need today. It's 90% of the products, I think. So that's the question, actually. If we look at the planning, the moment that economics began to intervene in relations between people and plan things, then we saw the warping that we see today. The economy, according to Bala Sulam, is there planning or is it the free economy? I don't know what free is, because there's no freedom. What are you talking about? If all the papers and all the internet and media are in the hands of people who can pay and pressure. So what freedom are you talking about? Freedom is where everyone has an equal access to a paper, to someone who with one phone call can fill a whole paper with whatever he wants. What equality are you talking about? It doesn't exist. That's one thing. The other thing, you want to cancel all the problems out? First phase, cancel advertising. There's no advertising. Very simple. You're not allowed to advertise anything. You're not to buy this or buy that. Just no advertising. And let's see how in a few months the whole world calms down. There's no advertising in anything. You're not allowed to advertise in all of media channels. People should not read about anything. That's it. We say the whole advertising system, it's really the driving force of the economy. It's true, because through that, we're creating fake desires in people, and then we have to fill those desires with a fake industry that is absolutely no need for, and this is how it goes around and around. So you see the numbers growing, but these numbers are just blown up. There's no contribution. It's just destruction for the planet Earth, for ecology, for the environment. So how much can we advance like that? So this is precisely the point against a planned economy. And like in 29, when the crash, when Keynes got into the economy, where he started in a fake way, he started pumping up the demand. If we only produce what we need, and if there's so many players in the market, there's balance. So that's why I'm saying, if you cancel advertising, then this whole ball will come down to the normal size, more or less. But it doesn't mean that we're still at the integral society. Today, we already have another problem, that we need to be connected to one another. That's nature pushing us. We're getting right now a very special condition. Not only don't produce surplus, don't start growing in people these fake desires. We're already connected to each other, and don't behave like that. We're in some sort of warping against the natural system that is now starting to become clearer and become revealed between us. So that's why we need the integral education. But it's much easier, because through that we reduce competition. What will you do with those people who are going out of the workforce now, out of all the factories that are going to go bankrupt? That's going to happen anyhow. Or if we do it in a rational manner, under control, or it'll be truly bankruptcy. If we look at, okay, there's a bubble, and we need to pop it and get the air out. If we did it ourselves in a rational way, agreeing between us, then it would come down slowly and we would control these situations. We would put out fires, etc. The way it's going, it won't be like that. We're seeing protests throughout the world and problems throughout the world and revolutions and bloodshed because we do not want to take this process upon ourselves. With your permission, I want to go to the quote because he explains the problem in receiving a new system. And he explains that at a time of destruction, the international workforce, you need to purify previous sciences. When the facts talk about loss, we have to sit people down on the bench to study and start with responsibility to research the path and its principles. This is the scientific thinking for when we come upon conflicts between reality, the new reality, and theory. And only a true breakthrough in conceptual breakthrough, new science and new life can help. He's saying it's a very difficult thing to get rid of preconceived ideas, that you're changing a person's very foundations of his existence. It's so against our nature, against our desire. I myself, I'm dealing with it for years, maybe 35 years. I can't even imagine how a person can easily be capable of it. But it turns out that pressures, threats, fears, starvation, the threat of war, that's what actually, in these critical states, usually pressurize a person and they agree to maintain a minimal way of life, to exist in peace and just be healthy and just have bread to eat. It's possible. Kabbalist Sulam writes that that today we're facing such huge threats, such advanced things. We're seeing the tsunami coming. It's easier for us. But the problem is still, even though we have a system, where will we find partners for ourselves that can bring us to a state where we can get to huge masses of people and huge audiences and bring the medicine before the blow? In connection with this, I wanted to ask, but now that you talked about the partners, Kabbalist Sulam, when he talked about the path, he didn't say sit down and we'll try to understand what happened. He said, I'll explain to you. Is the wisdom of Kabbalah open to accepting other attitudes, or is it completely closed? Completely closed. It's total. So what kind of partners are you looking for? Partners that understand that there's no other attitudes. First of all, I'm willing to talk to everyone. Let them come and talk and show everyone that they have something in their hand. If you're not talking about the method itself and its implementation, of course I can learn from others and listen to them. But the implementation is, of course, very problematic. The foundation of the method comes from nature. It doesn't come from some smart person that got up in the middle of the night with some idea and started talking about it in the whole world, like with all kinds of faiths. Here we're learning it from nature, but just a little bit more in depth. So if you get a bit deeper into nature, there's lots of scientists talking about it, that you're already in the integral world, whether you like it or not. Nature is pushing us toward it. And in the next stage, you have to go into the system. And if you don't suit yourself to that system, you are losing in a big way. And not right away, but through suffering and at all levels, in every way. If that's what we're learning from nature, and if that's what's being revealed and getting closer to us, coming closer, I'm willing to listen to anyone that will tell me in what way he thinks from the current society we can advance in an integral manner. I'd be happy to learn. But if he says, no, the society has to be we'll divide things between us and make, we'll have protectionism, but that's not natural. It's not, and that person wants to throw us, he thinks through that he'll find the solution, and he'll throw us a few hundred years backward, but it won't help. The trend is here. It's above us. So apart from the future form that we must have around equality, unity of all of humanity in one body, like Baal Salam said, one family, apart from that, all the other things I'm willing to listen to. Maybe we'll read the third quote, and then we'll understand even more. He says, if we don't look past our conscious, then there's a huge conflict. It's a time of birth. What is the point of socialism in our time? What's the path that we have to take? A researcher might come and say, I researched and I have things based on social sciences, and another one might come say, I researched biology. Can we build an integral system that takes Kabbalah along with the other systems? It's not methods what they're explaining. They're just bringing us proof. I have proof from quantum physics, biology, and botanica, and whatever you want. All the things today indicate, I don't think anyone's denying it, that the whole world is one connected system in an integral manner, and it's logical. And it always was. It just wasn't, we just couldn't see it. Humanity couldn't have advanced properly. Apart from people on Earth, there were always systems, inanimate, vegetative. Apart from people in their life, we were all in some kind of balance, and only people, to the extent that he developed, would bring unbalance into this system. And that's how he developed to evil recognition in his nature, that he's not in balance with the other systems of nature. Now we are finally in recognition of this evil, and now we need to change ourselves, to bring ourselves to balance. That is missing in all of nature at the end of the day. And through that, we will be able to supply a good future to ourselves and security. That's all that's left, and it's clear to everyone. Now just bring me a system, a method, how we're going to do it. I'm willing to listen. Let's be partners. Bring me all the managers, politicians, economists, wealthy CEOs, army generals, whoever. Let's sit together and let's think. It's a problem. It's a general problem. So it's not clear to me, what partnership do you expect from them if in advance it's based on our system? There is, of course. I think there is. I think that today it's starting to be understood that we are in an integral system altogether. There's like a rumor, you hear it goes next to your ear, but until it goes in more and more, it reaches a place to your inner desires where you're checking, is it with you or not? That takes time. We've learned lots of things dozens of years ago in school, and right now I'm starting to understand their internalness. It takes time, but to the extent that we start discussing it, it'll change us. It will bring us closer to an understanding where we are. Today, we don't know what's going to happen the next day. How can we manage the world in that manner? Between here and the system, there's really a distance. Between here and the method. You have a situation today, and you have a situation that you should have tomorrow. How, with all our wisdom and psychology and sociology, economy, everything that we have, with all the smart people in the world, how can we make the transition from one situation to the next? That's it. How can we make peace at the end of the day? Then we'll discuss that we bring a husband and wife to court. We obligate them to get into a discussion between them. They don't want to talk. So we'll pressurize them to make them talk because there's no choice. It's life or death. We'll discuss it. We'll distribute this education throughout the world. People will start thinking about it, to understand, to feel. And through that, we'll start being more integral. We'll suddenly get excited about being connected. It's a system like this. We'll have the integral mind and heart instead of the capitalistic individual attitude we have at the moment. And you'll start to understand that it is possible to build things in another way. Today, we don't have the sensitivity or brains for it. Today, I'm not capable of imagining such a society. It doesn't look possible. How is it possible? But if I change inside, like a mother who has 20 kids, but she's thinking about all the 20 at once, there's no problem, because they're all in her feeling. With us as well, the whole world suddenly is inside us and my internal emotions, and then it's not hard for me to think about everyone. And then we'll build systems like this and we'll implement them. The problem is internal sensitive, that we have to build these systems inside to bring a person to the new person, to the new integral person. And that we will achieve through education. And then we will not be short of smart people, economists, politicians, people specializing in society. They will be able to build these systems in a gradual manner, how we rise to the new standard of living in the world. But there's a precondition. They have to first have the integral mind. They have to start to listen. That's it. They don't have to agree to something that they don't know anything about. They need to hear a little bit. What does it mean, the integral world? What is nature obligating us to do? Who are we that are against nature? How can we imagine to ourselves the new society, what will be in the end? Why do we have to come to it? And what is the effectiveness, or what is the destruction that will come from not listening to the commands of nature in an integral manner? We need to explain this to them. It's not big wisdom. through clips, through discussions, talks, theater. We can show these things very easily. Bala Sulam writes that it's not so easy, like you're saying. It's not easy because it's an internal change of a person. But from the moment that it becomes the masses, that the masses doing it, then we begin through that to understand that there is a general power operating on person, that if the whole world is beginning to think in one direction, then I do also. We see it in polls, research, how we are connected to each other. So there's no problem. Let's just start getting this method outward. But then it's not partnership. We're leading the process. We're still leading the process. And who do you recommend? Is there someone in the world that you recommend? There's no partnership here. There's no real partnership. It's other relations. It's not really a partnership. Our relations, let's say people who come from wisdom of Kabbalah and other leaders, it's not really partnership. You mean to accept our methods? Let them bring a method. I'm willing to listen. Let's see. You're saying you have something in your pocket. I'm sure you have nothing in your pocket. Sir, I'm sorry. I see how they get together. There's nothing in the world. The world is empty. The world doesn't have a system. The world is like a little boy who's gotten lost. I'm willing to listen. I'd be happy. I read all kinds of opinions for each day. It's getting clearer and clearer that this is the only system left. That we're at the finish line. I want to say that we need to bring economists. We want to see if they have something to say. We want to look at previous talks that we had. I'll be happy on the condition that you'll help me understand them, because I don't speak that language. We have big experts. They'll help you. So again, we came to the end of the show, dear viewers. The solution where we're trying to verify the methods that Bala Sulam suggested, be with